So for today, we are going to attempt to cover 3 books of the Bible. Last week, we introduced the theme of wisdom literature, this theme of wisdom literature and the depths of wisdom literature in the Bible. We said that wisdom literature kind of comes in a couple of categories in the Bible. Wisdom started out earlier on, you can find it in the scripture as being skillful in a certain task or being knowledgeable in a certain task or subject. In the wisdom literature, though, it takes more of a defined role. In Proverbs, it's practical instructions on how to live and how to get good, favorable outcomes from your life. In Job and Ecclesiastes, it is more of wrestling with and trying to find wisdom in a world that doesn't make much sense. And so we looked at those couple of kinds of wisdom. So today we're going to look at 3 books of the Bible, that is Job, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. The next week we will go back, so we're skipping a couple of books, but we'll look at Job, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, so they're kind of related. Next week we'll jump back into Proverbs and Psalms, or Psalms and Proverbs, looking at the wisdom and Hebrew poetry that's found in the book of Psalms as well. But today we got 3 books that we want to give a brief overview over. And depending on how it fits in, I do want to show, hopefully attempt to show, a couple of videos that goes along with these books. If you've never seen any of these videos, I don't think I've showed one in here, but these videos are by a YouTube channel or a website called The Bible Project. And if you love studying the Word and wanting to know what the books of the Bible and themes of the Bible are about, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and go to The Bible Project. And they have videos like these on every book of the Bible. So in about 6 to 10 minutes, they will go through and explain what I think is a marvelous job with amazing graphics and everything. It looks, to see the graphics, you may say, well, that's like a children. It is not a children thing. This is an academic, it's so much of what we're covering. And they approach it from very different perspectives. So I hope to show some of those today if we have time. But I want to go through just kind of an introduction and overview of each of these books, beginning with the book of Job. So the book of Job is a familiar book to some extent and degree to even our modern culture. When one thinks of the book of Job, usually the topic of suffering comes up because Job suffered a lot. He suffered a lot personally in his health. He suffered with the death of his children. So you oftentimes hear phrases like the trials of Job, the suffering of Job. The patience of Job is a phrase that's used in the New Testament, although Job wasn't very patient at times. But these are phrases that we hear in our modern culture, letting us know that the book of Job has been very pertinent and relevant to our modern world. However, the book of Job isn't so much just about Job's suffering as it is the question, and this is where wisdom comes in, as it is the question of the why behind Job's suffering. That's the question of the book. Why is Job suffering like he is? Now, the readers of the book of Job, we understand what's going on, quote, behind the scenes. Because we get the introduction in chapter 1 and 2 of this heavenly courtroom scene where you have Satan, or the accuser that comes before God, accusing Job, or really accusing God for what he's doing for Job, and that puts into action what happens to Job. Well, Job doesn't know any of that. God isn't telling him, hey, there's this setup in heaven. We've been talking about you and some bad things are going to happen. Job's just going through a horrible time of suffering, not knowing why. He doesn't think he's done anything wrong, but conventional wisdom of the day says to suffer that much, you must have done something wrong. Somebody that's right and just and pure and holy doesn't suffer like Job is suffering. And Job's saying, I haven't done anything wrong, which we find out in the behind the scenes, he hasn't done anything wrong. So it's the question of why Job is suffering and how does God's justice fit into the sufferings of Job. So that's really what the book of Job is about. It's a search for wisdom. So the book of Job offers a biblical perspective on suffering. And a biblical perspective in the book of Job, it is relevant to mention that that's to be distinguished from offering an explanation of suffering. Because there's still a great question in our world, why do good people suffer so much? Why do bad things happen to good people? Again, why do good things happen to bad people is another question that you can ask of wisdom. Because conventional wisdom of the day, and really a lot of that stems out of the principles coming out of the law. Now, the principles coming out of the law was, if you keep the words of the law, you'll be blessed in the city, blessed in the field, you'll be healthy, happy, prosperous, all of this stuff. If you're wicked and evil, then bad things will happen to you. You'll be cursed in the city, cursed in the field, you'll be rejected, bad things will happen. So ancient wisdom says, or an ancient framework of the gods and religion is, if you're good, you'll be blessed. If you're bad and wicked, you'll be cursed. Well, in this wisdom literature of Job and Ecclesiastes and even Psalms, you've got this reversal. Bad things are happening to good people, and good things are happening to bad people. So it seems like all of the wicked in the world, well, they're prospering, they have everything, they're getting blessed, while the righteous are suffering and being oppressed and poor and sick. Why is this happening? It doesn't make sense to conventional, quote, wisdom. So if you go to the book of Job trying to find an explanation of suffering, many people come away disappointed when they're looking for specific answers. Why am I going through what I go through? And as a pastor for 20 plus years, I've had people come to me and says, I've got this disease, I've been diagnosed with this. This must be God repaying me for something I've done. I've done something bad, and this just must be why I'm doing that. And so we all try to reason why things happen. And so the plot of the book and the point of the book teaches really that human wisdom is totally inadequate. But God's wisdom is unfathomably deep, that we as finite human beings cannot simply know and understand why things happen the way that they do. So to those looking to Job for answers for the reasons for suffering will oftentimes come away disappointed. Which brings us to the overview of the book of Job. The purpose of the book of Job is to explore God's policies concerning justice, especially as it regards the suffering of the righteous. So we see in the beginning of the book, Satan in a heavenly courtroom scene comes before God. And Satan implies that Job is only following and serving God because he's blessed. Because God has blessed Job. And God, you've blessed Job, and that's why he follows you. And if God were to cut off Job's blessings, then Job would not follow him. And so that is the implication, is really against God's system of justice. God, you're blessing Job too much, and that's why he's following you. Watch what Job does. And so God comes to Job's defense, saying that, Job is, and in the book it's clear in the beginning, Job is upright, he's righteous, he's pious, he even makes sacrifices for his children just in case they were to sin that day, that they'd be covered. He's an upright man. And so thus the testing of Job begins. So the calamities that follow cause Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, those are the three main, quote, friends of Job. The calamities in Job's life lead his three friends to assume that Job had sinned. because of what is happening to him. You had to have done something wrong, Job. Oh, I haven't. Well, you had to. And so what happens is they go through 3 rounds of speeches in the book, just trying to tell Job what he must have done. Job, maintains his innocence. So the majority of the book, chapters 3 through 31, revolves around 3 rounds of speeches from these friends concerning Job who present their case from, again, conventional wisdom. The righteous just don't suffer like this, Job. You had to have sinned. And these friends believe that they understand the ways of God in the world, so they can come to Job and explain it. What you find in chapter 32 is a character by the name of Elihu comes in during the later part of the book. He plays the role of a overconfident youth who thinks they're wiser than the elders. So we have another guy coming in, chiming in. So you've got Job's thoughts and opinions in his speeches. You've got the friends' thoughts and opinions in their speeches. You've got Elihu's thoughts, opinions in his speeches. And they're not getting anywhere until finally God comes in the last part of the book in chapter 38. And there are 2 rounds of speeches when God comes in and he plays the ultimate role in the story. So in the end, the tables are turned completely. The question of where wisdom is found is answered by silencing all human voices that would insist that God must explain himself to them. Here, God simply calls human wisdom into account, powerfully demonstrating over and over again from creation, both its origins and its care for it, that wisdom lies in him alone. Job, where were you when the world was created? Who are you, Job? Who is any human being in relationship to God? So basically, wisdom lies with God and God alone. The book ends with God pronouncing his verdict in favor of Job over against his friends, and then God blesses and restores Job with a double portion of everything that he lost. So there you see the outline of the book of Job. You have the first prologue, this heavenly scene. You have the speeches of Job and his friends that takes place in the majority of the book from chapter 3 to chapter 31. And you see there to break down the first round of speeches, second round, third round of speeches. Job begins and ends with his statements and speeches. Elihu comes in and just goes at Job for 6 chapters. And then finally God steps in the 4th part of the book. And so that's our basic overline. Just a couple of extra things. We don't know who wrote the book of Job. We don't really know when it wrote or when the events happened. Or listen, don't let it mess with you, but even if these events happened in a historical manner, or if Job was ancient literature written to convey and teach theology. You remember, in a lot of things we've talked about in the Bible, the main purpose here is not history or to prove that a man named Job existed or all these things happened to him or these are his friends, but it's literature to teach us theology. It's to teach us about God. So Job is inspired literature to teach us wisdom and to teach us about the wisdom of God compared to the wisdom of humans. So many people differ on how historically accurate Job is. That's not really the main point of Job at all. Israel really doesn't come to mind here in Job. It's more just this general human wisdom as opposed to God's wisdom. That's the main teaching and the inspired point of the story of Job. Ecclesiastes is the ponderings of a wisdom teacher who wrestles with life's realities. And I think I can see the older I've gotten, the more I've lived, the more older we've all gotten and all live, there's a part of me Now, I know the rest of the story because of Christ and the life we have in Him and the hope we have in Christ. But there's also a humanness part of me that understands the wisdom literature, even as expressed in Ecclesiastes, that wrestles with life's realities. What is to be gained by achieving wealth or wisdom, when in the end death claims both rich and poor, wise and foolish, and how these realities relate to the fear of God. You know, what's the point of a world that doesn't make sense? Is really, you know, when you think back over the last 2 and 3 years of what we've gone through, what is the point of anything in this world? What sense does this world make? And Ecclesiastes is written from a very pessimistic point of view. And so it teaches that the only hope of enduring the present is simply to fear and obey God. That's the whole heart of the matter. The word Ecclesiastes comes from the translation of the Hebrew word Kohelet. Kohelet is found, the Hebrew word is found in the first verse of the Bible, the words of Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. The meaning of Kohelet has come to be understood as the leader or speaker of an assembly or a teacher. Tradition identifies Kohelet as Solomon. The author, there's 2 major parts of this book. There's the author of the book who writes the book, but the author is giving the words of this teacher, this Kohelet. So the author of the book, whoever that may be, is giving us the words of the teacher, either Solomon or maybe another descendant of David. We're not told. The theme is clear, though, stated at the outset and repeated at the conclusion to form a literary envelope for the whole book. Here's the theme. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What's the point of any of this that happens under the sun? The Hebrew term translated vanity has carried many connotations throughout the years, from absurdity, frustration, futility, nonsense, emptiness, and meaningless. I think that's how the NIV translates it. Meaningless, meaningless. All is meaningless. The core idea of the word vanity is really vapor, communicating to us the temporary and fleeting nature and of life, with much of life having no true and lasting value. Life itself is a fleeting vapor. Everything that we go after in life is a fleeting vapor. It's temporary, it's fleeting, and there's no true value. So the teacher warns against a life caught in the pursuit of absurd and empty pleasures that have no lasting value. Basically, much of the perspective of Ecclesiastes is written about a life apart from purpose and meaning in God. So a purposeless, meaningless life apart from God leads to vanity. It leads to meaningless fulfillments that bring us no lasting satisfaction at all. Now, this book has been difficult to read because of its nature. It's often seen as rambling. It's often seen as negative or pessimistic. It's often seen as self-contradictory or contradictory to the rest of the message of the Bible. For example, one of the messages of Ecclesiastes is you might as well make the most of what you have today because you're going to be dead, you're going to be gone, you're going to be forgotten, you're just like the animals. It gives no hope of an afterlife, no hope of anything better. It's everybody lives, everybody dies, everybody's gone, and everybody's forgotten. So eat, drink, be merry, live it up, the gift that you have today, because this is all that there is. Which that would be contradictory to most of the other teaching of the Bible, which makes it critical of how we interpret, that we must see this book for what it is so that we don't draw wrong conclusions. But that's made it one reason it's difficult to read. And it's seemingly hopeless conclusions, that nothing in life really matters. So there's four major realities that dominate the overall perspective of Kohelet, the teacher. First of all, is that God is the single, indisputable reality. God is the single, indisputable reality. He's the creator of all and the one from whom all life comes. So anything without God is meaningless. The second thing we need to understand, and this is what Job found out, God's ways are not always, if ever, understandable. We can't understand God's ways. His wisdom is so much greater than our wisdom. The third reality that Ecclesiastes shows us is that on the human side, nothing really makes sense. Again, this goes back to the way things should be is the righteous are blessed, the wicked are cursed. So the way things should be is not the way that they are in reality. In reality, when trying to fathom this world in a logical way, not much in this world makes sense. Which doesn't make sense if there's God, but that goes back to God's ways are not always, if ever, understandable from the viewpoint of the teacher. And the fourth reality that dominates the theme of Ecclesiastes is the great equalizer is death, which happens to all. And once you're dead, that's it. Let's look in Ecclesiastes. I want to read just a couple of verses from Ecclesiastes. Obviously, overview in 3 books. We can't spend a lot of time in the scripture. But I do want to read just a couple of things from Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. These are the words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, or vanity, vanity, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors, at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go. The earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the north, blows to the south, turns to the north, round and round it goes, ever returning its course. Basically, everything just goes on day after day, year after year, century after century. Everything just goes on just like it does. Verse 8, all things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. So basically, we're just a part of this never-ending cycle of things that happen all the time, and generations come and generations go, and we work until all the days of our life, and it's all meaningless because we all die in the end. You probably don't have much devotional reading out of Ecclesiastes. Just looking at the headings just throughout the Bible I have here, pleasures are meaningless, wisdom is meaningless, work is meaningless, advancement is meaningless, riches are meaningless. We all have a common destiny. If you look in chapter 9 of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, and the Kohelet here is observing the world and making conclusions about the world he observes. He says, so I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands. But no one knows whether love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny, the wicked and the righteous, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean. those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. As it is with the good, so with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of the people, moreover, are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts while they live, and afterwards they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better off than a dead one. He's like, you're just better off alive than dead. Just be thankful you're not dead. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, their jealousy have since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. So go eat your food with gladness, drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God's already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white, always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there's neither working nor planning nor knowledge or wisdom. I've seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, to wealth to the brilliant, favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to all of them. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. Fish are caught in a cruel net, birds are taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. So again, it's just enjoy your meaningless life with your meaningless wife, working your meaningless job, living all your meaningless days until you die, and nothing you've done is remembered, so whatever. But then he contradicts himself in other points. Invest in meaning, invest in many ventures. Remember your Creator while you're young, while life is good. So it's almost like this aged person who's faced with the ultimate mortality of life and reality of death, looking back on a youthful life, saying enjoy your youthful life, and you work all your life, you toil, you labor, you sweat, you worry, you fear, and then you get to the end, you're just going to die anyway. So you might as well just enjoy it. So the teacher's own point seems to be that even if the only real certainty about life is death, you should live life as a gift from God and enjoy the life that you have. In such a world, joy and satisfaction are found in living the journey of life without trying to be in control or to make gain of what is merely fleeting. Basically, you're not in control of your life. So true pleasure is not found in your achievements, your successes, or in the gain of temporary things. And so by this understanding, the book teaches wisdom in the final frame, in the final verses of the book, in Ecclesiastes 12. Here's the conclusion of the book. Now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. The end. Basically, 11 chapters of meaninglessness, vanity. Just fear God and keep His commandments. Be a good Jew. That's it. Just be a good Jew. And the end. So ultimately, as someone that's wrestling with the realities of life, with the fate of their own mortality in view, the ending is simply going back to God is really the ultimate purpose and fulfillment in life. To fear God, to keep His commandments, to enjoy, even though life is full of vanity, He also says life is a gift that God has given us. So to enjoy the gift that God has given us while fearing God and keeping His commandments. And that's the wisdom of the teacher that we find here in Ecclesiastes. So there you see a brief outline of the teacher there. of Ecclesiastes. The author gives an introduction. Then he gives the teacher's words, wisdom reflections. And here's some of the topics: satisfaction, time, justice, and work. Then chapters 5 through 12 gives the teacher's admonitions and observations. Observations about religion, politics, wealth, wisdom, retribution, destiny, life, youth, and age. And then the author's conclusion at the end is to fear God and to keep His commandments all the meaningless days of your life. Moving on from that, so if you are feeling bad or depressed, don't read Ecclesiastes. Go to Ephesians or Colossians or somewhere like that. Because there is hope and there is meaning in life. That's what we find. And we do find it's ultimately fulfilled in Jesus Christ. And we do find we have a hope and a future with Jesus Christ. We have eternal life, where the reality of the teacher is the reality of death and finality. The reality of Christ is life and life eternal. That we've passed from death into life. We've passed from the meaninglessness into the meaning of life. Meaninglessness apart from Christ, meaning in Christ. Everything in life will leave you empty, but Christ will leave you fulfilled and satisfied. That's what we find when we ultimately get to Jesus in the Scriptures. So thank goodness the Bible doesn't end with Ecclesiastes. That'd have been a pretty deep, dark place to be. Song of Songs, the next book we will look at. We conclude today with the Song of Songs. And Ecclesiastes is also on the Bible Project if you want to go home and look that up. Song of Songs. Song of Songs, the phrase Song of Songs is kind of like the Holy of Holies or the King of Kings. The holiest place of all the holy places was the Holy of Holies. The king above all the other kings is God. So the Song of Songs is the song of all songs. It's the greatest song out of all the songs that there are. Song of Songs is a love poem of several episodes celebrating the intimate love between a woman and a man. So now we're on the secular radio station. All right, we've left the Christian station. Now we're tuned into Kiss 95 or whatever. Just as Kohelet's motto is vanity of vanities, is a Hebrew superlative meaning everything is utterly meaningless. So the expression Song of Songs means the best song. So now we leave from utterly hopeless and meaningless to, man, life and love is great. So the Song of Songs means the best song, the most beautiful of all songs, the number one song, the song that tops the charts, is the Song of Songs. It's an elegantly stated collection of writings and poems celebrating the love shared between young lovers created in God's image. They bask in each other's beauty, almost to a kind of way, You remember that when you were young and your mom and dad, or you find them kissing in the kitchen and you're like, stop it. That can be like reading the Song of Songs. It's just like, get a room. They bask in each other's beauty and describe each other's beauty in very elegant and sometimes graphic and glorious ways. They bask in each other's ability to satisfy their need for physical love. The Song of Songs pays homage to the wonder and majesty of monogamous sexual love when that love is intensely pursued with honor and faithfulness. And that's one of the points of the Song of Songs, is that these are two dedicated people. This isn't just somebody going out seeking lustful pleasure all over the world. This is in the context of monogamy and marriage and love and intimacy and faithfulness. The opening reference to the book is referred to Solomon's Song of Songs, which could refer to Solomon being the author of the Song of Songs. It can also be, maybe in the older Bible translations, referred to as the Song of Solomon because of how the book begins. Or it could be the song is written about Solomon, which in one phase in Solomon's life wouldn't make much sense because this is a monogamous love to one person. Solomon had love to 700 different wives. Or it could be dedicated to Solomon. Solomon has, and there's a chapter in here that describes Solomon's wealth and riches. So we're kind of unsure of what Solomon's Song of Songs means, whether he authored it, whether it's about him, or simply dedicated, or follows in the ways of Solomon's, wisdom writings. Many of the references to Solomon are in third person, and it's more likely that the compiler of the song was an admirer of the great king's successes or supporter of the wisdom literary traditions that Solomon wrote in. Many interpreters throughout history have been uncomfortable with the explicit material found in the book. We probably don't cover Song of Songs in children's church, I'm guessing, too often. Or, you'd have a 6-year-old saying, "Mommy, what are these? What's this? What's this mean?" So parental discretion advised. Because of the graphic, explicit nature of the book, and because God's nowhere to be found. I mean, it's not a book about God, on the surface. Because it's not a book that mentions God, or that mentions God's covenant or law, it's a love song. That's caused both Jewish and Christians to kind of take a typological or allegorical approach by using the explicit nature to spiritualize it. So the book is said to illustrate God's covenant bond and intimate relationship with His people. I've heard many teachings on the Song of Solomon in allegorical fashion, relating it to Christ's intimate relationship with His people. And I do not believe that that's inherently wrong. I believe there can certainly be a place for going back and reading Song of Solomon in the light of our intimate relationship with Christ. Many Jewish interpreters have taken the song as an allegory of the love between Yahweh and Israel, while Christian scholars have often accepted the book as praising the love between Christ and the church. So I'm not saying that you can't draw those allegorical lines. Certainly I've heard some really great and phenomenal teaching of Christ through the Song of Songs. One question is, though, is this what the original author intended? Did he intend it to be an allegory? Or did he intend it to be, a story like, let's say Job was a literary story. Obviously, Job is teaching a certain theological point about God and life. We can absolutely 100% draw that from the conclusion that the writer of Job was absolutely trying to teach us something about God and us. Can we say explicitly Song of Songs was trying to teach us something about God? We can't say that for certainty because God is missing and there's a lot of love in the book. And it's explicitly between man and woman. So we can't say for certain whether that was the intended original meaning of the writer of the Song of Songs, but certainly it has been applied that way in allegorical ways, and there can be much merit in that as well. So not throwing that out at all. Crucial for good reading of the song is to recognize that it usually comes in three basic voices. Basically, who's doing the talking. Sometimes you don't know if it's the woman doing the talking, describing the man describing the woman, who's doing the talking. So you got to be very careful when reading it that way, because sometimes the bride is speaking, sometimes the bridegroom is speaking. And I've got an outline here, but it's not very well put together. Because it just kind of jumps in and out. Half the time they're just pursuing each other. They're looking for each other. One's hiding from the other. They're passionately pursuing one another. They're describing one another in their love. So it's really probably just kind of a put together of a lot of poetry and writings here. But definitely pay attention to the voices, who's speaking, man or woman speaking. There's also the daughters of Jerusalem. There's the watchman on the wall. You have some of those characters in the book as well. But basically, you have several scenes here. You have the lovers that are presented. You have the lovers together. She searches for him among the shepherds. They exchange delight in each other. You have a second scene of hope and invitation, characterized by a longing. She's longing for her lover. He calls out to her from hiding, but is sent away at the close of the day. There's this continual seeking, and then there's possibly a dream scene in the midst of all of that. So it's pretty not clear. It's kind of floating in and out of different descriptions and scenes. Then Solomon's wealth is described in chapter 3. Then you have admiration and invitation. Then the man takes the lead and describes his lover and her body using great imagery. Another dream scene and a search. The delights of love. Both the man and the woman speak at length in the fifth scene. They have a love as strong as death. So this is a very interesting book. It does not fit in the traditional, obviously, sense of what we've seen as far as literature so far. The wisdom of literature, the wisdom here is the wisdom of love and youth and relationship and intimacy that you find here. Obviously, it's grouped in with the wisdom literature because of its attributing to Solomon being a part of that. But nevertheless, there's some good pickup lines here in the Song of Songs. There's, on your anniversary, you can write some of this in the card, and some good relevant pickup material in here. But the beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Just great stuff. Fig trees all over the place, and bloomings, and honeycombs and honeysuckles, and lots of imagery you find here. No lack of imagination. Song of Songs there. Any questions about anything other than Song of Songs? So again, this is the 30,000 foot flyover, not what I would want to do in covering these books, because they're all so deep and there's all so much we can get into. But I do encourage you, if you can get on YouTube, just search, Ecclesiastes, the Bible Project. They also have a website, and I think all of that's on their website too. But if you want a deeper breakdown of what's going on that we didn't get a chance to do in our 30,000 foot flyovers, you can search through those, and it'll give you a great. And they even have podcasts you can listen to, and they dive into deep, really deep stuff. So I gain a lot from these guys. So that will help you kind of supplement some of the details of what's going on in the book if you have any additional questions. But that's just kind of a brief overview. Here's the point of the book. Here's the wisdom we gain from that. So next week we'll talk about two other books, huge books, and that would be Psalms and Proverbs. And we'll look at those two together next week.